What happens when a single moment of rage in the middle of the open sea collides with a world of unimaginable power? This isn't just the story of an argument on a ship's deck. It's the story of a tenured cabin steward, a quiet young man in a hoodie, and a slap that echoed from the luxury suite deck all the way to the boardroom. It's the story of how one phone call, a calm, simple call to dad, didn't just stop a massive ship in its tracks. It grounded an entire cruise line's reputation, ended a career in spectacular fashion, and triggered a storm of karma so severe it could only be real life. Stick with me as we unravel the shocking true account of the Voyage 88, the exclusive suite lounge of Celestial Horizon Cruises' flagship, the Azure Titan. Was an oasis of curated calm. The scent of warm towels and expensive perfume mingled with the low hum of the massive engines, preparing to depart the port outside. It was a Tuesday morning on a transatlantic crossing from the port of Miami to Southampton. For someone like Brenda Miller, a senior ship steward, these voyages were the bread and butter of the job. Brenda, as she preferred to be called, moved through the luxury suite lounge with an air of ownership. After 22 years with the company, this lounge was her domain. She knew the precise angle to place a glass of champagne so the bubbles caught the light, the exact decibel of a passenger's snore that warranted a gentle nudge, and when a nervous flyer needed a reassuring word. But today, her practiced smile was a thin veneer over a crackling fault line of stress. Her mother's nursing home bills were piling up, a stark mountain of invoices on her small kitchen table back in Queens. Her ex-husband, a captain for a rival cruise line, had just posted pictures of his new younger girlfriend on a beach in Bali, and just that morning, her car had refused to start, forcing her into a frantic, expensive Uber ride to the port. Brenda felt like a spring wound tight, and her patience, usually a deep well, was now a shallow, muddy puddle. Her gaze swept the lounge, cataloging the passengers. In Cabana 2, a hedge fund manager she recognized, already barking into his phone. In Cabana 3, a British actress trying to be incognito behind oversized sunglasses. And then at table 4, him. He looked to her discerning eye completely out of place. He was a young black man, probably in his early 20s, dressed in a simple bright blue hoodie designer, but understated and expensive-looking noise-canceling headphones that already covered his ears. He hadn't made eye contact, his focus entirely on a thick, leather-bound book in his lap. He didn't have the look-at-me entitlement of the new money tech brothers, or the world-weary arrogance of the old money aristocrats. He was just quiet, and his quietness irritated her. It felt like a judgment, a silent dismissal of Brenda's authority in her own lounge. This was Marcus Sterling. Anyone who followed the financial world would have instantly recognized the surname. His father, Harrison Sterling, was not just a billionaire. He was a titan, the founder and CEO of Sterling Global Logistics, a shipping empire that had revolutionized supply chain management. His corporate account was one of Celestial Horizon Cruises' largest. But Marcus wore his legacy like an invisible cloak. He deliberately avoided the flash, valuing privacy and intellectual pursuits over the glitz that his name could afford him. He was on his way to Oxford for a guest lecture on post-colonial literature. The book in his lap was Frantz Fanon's The Wretched of the Earth. What city are you watching this video from, and what time is it? By the way, if you're enjoying my videos, I'd be so happy if you could subscribe to my channel and like this video. The pre-departure service began. Brenda's junior colleague, a bright-eyed and eager young man named Kevin Park, was handling the other side. Brenda approached table 4. "Sir," she said, her voice a little sharper than she intended. Marcus didn't look up, lost in his reading and the classical music playing in his headphones. "Sir," she repeated louder, tapping his shoulder with a single manicured finger. Marcus flinched. Startled, he slid his headphones down around his neck, blinking. "Oh? I'm sorry. I didn't hear you." His voice was calm, deep, and without a trace of annoyance. "I need you to put your bag fully under the seat in front of you," Brenda said, pointing at his leather carry-on. It was mostly stowed, but the strap was peeking out by an inch. "All items must be completely clear of the aisle for port departure and emergency drill procedures." "Of course, my apologies," Marcus said politely. He bent down and tucked the strap in, pushing the bag further under the seat. He looked up, expecting a nod or a thank you. Instead, Brenda just stared at him, her lips a thin line. "And your book will need to be stowed as well." "It's just a book," he said with a slight frown. "I can hold it, sir. Maritime Authority regulations require all loose items to be secured during the departure safety briefing. You can put it in the seat pocket or in your bag." Her tone was that of a teacher scolding a difficult child. Marcus sighed, a barely audible sound. This was a dance he knew well. The subtle, persistent questioning of his presence in spaces like this. He never knew if it was his age, his race, his casual clothes, or a combination of all three. He simply closed the book and slid it into the seat back pocket. "There, Is that satisfactory? For now. Brenda clipped before turning on her heel and marching back to the service area. Kevin Park caught her eye. Everything okay over there? He asked tentatively. Just dealing with another one who thinks the rules are optional suggestions. Brenda muttered, snatching a bottle of water with unnecessary force, entitled. Kevin glanced over at table 4. He saw a young man sitting quietly now, staring out the window at the port, his headphones back on. He didn't look entitled. He looked tired. Kevin had a knot in his stomach. He'd seen this look on Brenda before. It was the look that preceded a storm, and as a ship's lines were cast off and the massive hull began its slow, deliberate push back from the dock, none of the passengers in their climate-controlled bubble knew that the real turbulence was already brewing inside. The Azure Titan was leaving the dock with a low, powerful rumble. The safety video, a slick production featuring minor celebrities, played on the screens. Most of the suite guests ignored it, lost in their own worlds. Marcus Sterling had his eyes closed, the music in his headphones a shield against the world. In the service area, Brenda Miller was doing her final cross-check, her movements sharp and angry. She slammed a metal container into its slot, the clang echoing in the small space. Kevin Park flinched. Brenda, are you all right? He asked, his voice low. I'm fine, Kevin, just do your job. She snapped, not looking at him. Her mind was a whirlwind of bills, her ex-husband's smiling face, and the quiet defiance of the young man at table 4. To her, Marcus wasn't a person. He was the focal point for every frustration that was choking her. He was the embodiment of a world that she felt was leaving her behind. A world where she, a hardworking woman, was struggling while someone who looked like a kid sat in a $10,000 suite, without a care in the world. The captain's voice, calm and professional, came over the PA. All crew, please take departure positions. Brenda did a final, furious walk through the lounge. Her eyes locked on table 4. Marcus had his phone in his hand, plugged into a portable battery pack that rested on his lap. He was scrolling through what looked like lecture notes. This was it, a clear violation. It was the hook she needed to reassert her dominance. She strode down the aisle. Sir, I need you to turn that off now. Marcus looked up, his brow furrowed. He took off his headphones. I'm sorry. Your phone. All electronic devices need to be stowed during the safety drill and departure procedures. You know the rules. Her voice was loud enough to make the passenger in cabana to lower his newspaper. It is in silent mode, Marcus said calmly, holding out the screen to show her the little icon in the corner. I'm just reviewing my notes. It's not disturbing anyone. I don't care, Brenda said, her voice rising. The rule is that it needs to be stowed. The battery pack as well. It's a safety hazard. It's a certified lithium-ion battery well under maritime limits. It's no more a hazard now than it will be in 20 minutes when we're in open water, Marcus reasoned. His tone still even, but with a new edge of firmness. He was an engineer by training before pivoting to his passion for literature. He knew the regulations. This calm, factual rebuttal was like gasoline on the fire of Brenda's rage. He wasn't just disobeying. He was correcting her in her domain, in front of her passengers. Are you talking back to me? She hissed, leaning closer. Her face was inches from his. Do you think because you're sitting here, you're better than me? That you're above the rules? Marcus leaned back, trying to create space. The smell of her hairspray was cloying. Ma'am, I'm not trying to cause a problem. I am simply stating that I am in compliance. There is no need for this aggression. Oh, I am the one being aggressive, is that it? She spat, her voice dripping with venomous sarcasm. You people are all the same. You waltz in with your headphones and your attitude, thinking you own the world. The phrase hung in the air, thick and poisonous. You people, Marcus's face, which had been patient and weary, hardened into a mask of cold stone. The warmth left his eyes. He slowly unplugged his phone from the battery pack, coiled the cable, and placed both items into his carry-on bag, which he then pushed further under the seat. He did it all with a deliberate, chilling slowness. He then looked up at her, his voice dropping to a near whisper, yet carrying more weight than any shout. That was unnecessary. It was the final straw. His quiet dignity, his refusal to be baited, was something Brenda couldn't comprehend. She saw it only as the ultimate act of disrespect. Her carefully constructed professional facade, already weakened by her personal turmoil, shattered completely. Her mind went blank. There was no thought of consequences of her career or the watching eyes of the other passengers. There was only a white-hot flash of pure, unadulterated rage. Her hand moved in a blur, crack. The sound was shockingly loud in the hushed lounge. It wasn't a soft tap. It was a hard, stinging slap. Brenda Miller had struck Marcus Sterling across the face, her palm connecting with his cheek with enough force to make his head snap to the side. For a full second, absolute silence reigned. It was a silence so profound it felt like the ship's engines had quit. The hedge fund manager in Cabana 2 had his mouth agape. The actress in Cabana 3 had lowered her sunglasses, her eyes wide with disbelief. Kevin Park, standing near the service area, looked like he had seen a ghost. Marcus slowly turned his head back to face her. A red mark was already blooming on his cheek, but his eyes held no anger, no tears, no shock. They held something far more terrifying, a deep, profound, and utterly unshakable calm. It was the calm of a man who was not a victim, but a witness to someone else's spectacular self-destructs. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't move from his seat. He simply looked into her eyes, and in that moment, Brenda Miller felt a sliver of cold fear pierce through her rage. She had just crossed a line from which there was no return. The slap was more than an assault. It was the sound of her entire life coming to an end. The echo of the slap seemed to linger in the conditioned air of the lounge. Brenda Miller stood frozen, her hands still tingling, her chest heaving. The initial rush of adrenaline was already being replaced by a creeping, icy dread. Her own actions felt alien to her, as if she had watched someone else commit the act. But the stunned faces of the passengers were a mirror reflecting her new horrifying reality. She opened her mouth to say something, to justify, to apologize, to scream, but no words came out. Her mind, which had been a storm of fury moments before, was now a hollow cavern of panic. She tried to seize back control, to frame the narrative. He was being insubordinate, a security threat, she stammered. The words sounding weak and pathetic even to her own ears. Marcus Sterling ignored her completely. He didn't engage. He didn't argue. He acted as if Brenda had ceased to exist. With the same unnerving calm he had displayed throughout the encounter, he reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. His movements were fluid and economical. Without a hint of tremor, he unlocked the screen, his thumb tapping on a single name in his favorites list, Dad. He held the phone to his ear. The ship was now turning onto the main channel, the engines powering up to head for the ocean. From the bridge, Captain Eva Rosta's voice came over the intercom, her accent clear and crisp. All stations, port departure complete, prepare for cruising speed. The phone connected. Marcus's voice was low, almost conversational. Yet every passenger in the silent front section of the lounge heard every single word. Dad. I'm fine. Listen, it happened again. A pause. The weight of those 3 words, "it happened again," was immense. They spoke of a history, a pattern of prejudice that was a grim, familiar companion. No, I'm okay. A ship steward. She assaulted me physically. He listened for a moment. Yes, Celestial Horizon. The Azure Titan ship, Miami to Southampton. We're leaving port now. Another pause. Marcus's eyes, still locked on some distant point beyond the lounge walls, were unreadable. Her name is Brenda Miller. He said it without malice, a simple statement of fact. Yeah, I'm sure the whole lounge saw it. He listened again, a brief nod. Okay, just handle it. He ended the call. He didn't look at Brenda. He didn't look at anyone. He simply placed the phone back in his pocket and stared straight ahead. For Brenda, it was the most terrifying display of power she had ever witnessed. It wasn't in shouting or threats. It was in the quiet confidence of that 2-minute conversation. Just handle it. In a corner office overlooking the skyscrapers of downtown Manhattan, Harrison Sterling hung up the phone. His face, usually warm and charismatic in public, was now a mask of cold fury. He was a self-made man who had clawed his way to the top of a ruthless industry. He was fiercely protective of 2 things, his business empire and his family. And a line had just been crossed. He didn't yell. He didn't throw things. He pressed the intercom button on his desk. Elizabeth, get me Richard Thorne on his cell. Now. Richard Thorne was the CEO of Celestial Horizon Cruises. He was at a charity golf tournament, about to tee off on the 7th hole. Harrison Sterling's next call was to his chief counsel. Anna, I want a full team mobilized. We have an assault on my son. Celestial Horizon, the Azure Titan, Miami. The employee's name is Brenda Miller. I want her arrested, and I want a civil suit that will own her soul. And get our PR team ready. We are going to war. Anna, a formidable lawyer who had won battles against entire nations, simply replied, consider it done. Harrison, on the 7th hole. Richard Thorne's phone buzzed. He saw the name Harrison Sterling and his stomach dropped. Sterling wasn't just a major client. Sterling Global Logistics spent over $50 million a year with his cruise line on ship supply and cargo logistics. Harrison. What a surprise, Thorne said, trying to sound cheerful. Cut the crap. Richard, Sterling's voice was like ice. Your steward, Brenda Miller, on the Azure Titan departing Miami right now, just physically assaulted my son. My son, Marcus. Thorne's blood ran cold. Harrison, I'm sure there's a misunderstanding. The only misunderstanding, Sterling cut in, his voice dangerously low, is that you seem to think my $50 million account is non-negotiable. Now listen to me very carefully. That ship is in the channel. You have 60 seconds to turn it around and get it back to the dock. If that ship reaches open water, you can consider our contract terminated effective immediately. And you can also consider yourself the subject of a lawsuit, so massive it will make your quarterly losses look like a rounding error. 60 seconds, Richard. The line went dead. Thorne stood paralyzed for a moment, the golf club slipping from his grasp. He fumbled for his phone, his hands shaking. He didn't call the port manager. He didn't call customer service. He called the one person who could override a captain. The director of marine operations at Port of Miami, on the deck of the Azure Titan. The engines were roaring, pushing the massive vessel past the breakwater. They were seconds from the point of no return. Suddenly, a voice crackled in Captain Rost's headset. Not from the Port Authority, but a direct, urgent command from the airline's own operations center. Titan, this is Miami Ops, abort departure. Abort departure immediately. Return to the dock. I repeat, abort and return to the dock. This is a Code Sierra security directive. Code Sierra, a top-level directive. Eva Rosta didn't question it. She was a professional. Her hands moved with practice speed, pulling the thrusters to idle, deploying the maneuvering propellers and reverse thrust systems. The ship decelerated with a gut-wrenching shudder, causing passengers to stumble slightly forward. Outside, the coastline began to flow in reverse. The Voyage, so close to becoming a reality, was violently undone. A wave of confused and alarmed murmurs swept through the entire ship. Captain Rosta's voice came over the PA, laced with a new steely authority. This is your captain speaking. Apologies for that. We are returning to the dock due to a security incident on board. Please remain in your locations until further notice. Port police will be meeting our vessel. Brenda Miller finally sank into a staff jump seat, her legs giving way. Her face was ashen. A security incident. It wasn't a mechanical failure or a weather issue. It was her. The call wasn't just a complaint. It was a kill switch. The ship, which had been a symbol of her escape and authority, was now her prison, slowly taxiing back to a fate she had sealed with her own hand. The return to the dock felt like an eternity. The mood inside the ship had shifted from pre-voyage anticipation to a tense, unnerving quiet. Every passenger, from the finest suite to the standard stateroom, knew something was deeply wrong. For the handful of witnesses in the luxury lounge, the source of the drama sat calmly at table 4, while the instigator, Brenda Miller, was a statue of pure dread in the staff seat. As the Azure Titan connected with the gangway, the cheerful holiday music was replaced by a sharp announcement from Captain Rosta. All passengers, please remain seated. No one is to leave the ship until authorized. Cabin crew, stand by. The lounge door opened, but it wasn't the usual ground staff who appeared. It was a grim-faced trio to port police officers, and a man in a tailored suit whose anxious expression screamed executive. This was Arthur Jenkins, Celestial Horizons VP of North American Port Operations. He had been yanked out of a regional planning meeting by a single frantic message from the CEO. Fix this. Jenkins' eyes swept the lounge and immediately found the red mark on Marcus Sterling's cheek. His heart sank. It was worse than he imagined. There was visible physical evidence. One of the officers spoke, his voice leaving no room for argument. We are here for Miss Brenda Miller. All heads turned to Brenda. The color drained completely from her face. She looked like a cornered animal. As the officers approached, she found her voice. A high-pitched, desperate sound. It wasn't my fault. He was a threat. He was aggressive. He wouldn't follow instructions. I felt endangered, she cried, pointing a shaking finger at Marcus. I acted in self-defense. Marcus didn't even flinch. He just watched. His expression was one of weary disappointment. The lead officer ignored her outburst. Ma'am, please come with us. We just need to get your statement. No. You need to get his statement. He's the one who caused all this. She insisted, her voice bordering on hysterical. Arthur Jenkins stepped forward, his own voice low but firm. Brenda, go with the officers, now. The use of her first name, stripped of any professional courtesy, was a clear signal. The company was no longer on her side. She was no longer an asset. She was a liability. Defeated, Brenda stood up and was escorted off the ship. Her 22-year career was evaporating with every step down the gangway. Jenkins then turned to Marcus. His face was a practiced mask of deep concern. Mr. Sterling, I am Arthur Jenkins, a vice president with the cruise line. On behalf of Celestial Horizon, I am profoundly, deeply sorry for what you have just experienced. It is unacceptable and inexcusable. Marcus finally spoke, his voice quiet but carrying immense authority. Your apology is noted, Mr. Jenkins. What happens now? We will, of course, arrange alternative transportation for you to London immediately on the carrier of your choice, Jenkins said quickly. We've also taken the liberty of arranging a private suite for you in our flagship terminal lounge. Whatever you need, it's yours. We just need to get a statement from you for our internal investigation. If you're willing, I am. Marcus said. But first, you should speak with your employee, Kevin Park. He was in the service area. You should also speak with the passengers in cabanas 2 and 3. They had a clear view. It was a masterstroke by directing them to other witnesses first. He established his own account as one part of a larger verifiable truth, making any attempt to discredit him impossible. Jenkins nodded, sweating slightly. Of course, right away. The disembarkation process was a carefully managed operation. Marcus was discreetly escorted off to a private lounge away from prying eyes. The other VIP witnesses were also taken aside to give their statements. Kevin Park, looking pale and nervous, was brought into a small office in the terminal. The interviews were a disaster for Brenda. The hedge fund manager in Cabana 2, a man who dealt in brutal facts, was unequivocal. The kid did nothing, he stated flatly. He was quiet. He complied with her requests, even when she was being needlessly aggressive. She was on a power trip. Then she slapped him. End of story. I testified to that in court. The actress from Cabana 3, her sunglasses now off, was visibly shaken. Her energy was hostile from the moment she approached him. She used the phrase, "you people," it was disgusting. And then she hit him. It was a genuine assault. I have it on video. Jenkins' blood turned to ice. Video. But the most damning testimony came from Kevin Park, terrified of repercussions, but knowing he had to tell the truth. Kevin recounted Brenda's aggressive behavior and her muttered, entitled comment in this service area. She was on edge all morning, Kevin said, his voice trembling slightly. The passenger at table 4 was nothing but polite. He never raised his voice. He never made any threats. What Brenda did was, it was completely unprofessional and unprovoked. Meanwhile, Brenda's own interview was a train wreck. She stuck to her story that Marcus was threatening, that his comments was a form of passive aggression, and that she feared for her safety. But when pressed for specifics, what threats did he make? What aggressive actions did he take? Her story fell apart into a jumble of subjective feelings and interpretations. When confronted with the fact that multiple witnesses, including her own colleague, directly contradicted her, she became defensive and belligerent. Back in the terminal, Jenkins was on the phone with the CEO, Richard Thorne, delivering the grim news. It's as bad as it gets, Richard. We have multiple credible witnesses, including one of our own, all corroborating the assault. There is no ambiguity. And there's video. There was a long, heavy silence on the other end of the line. And do you know who Harrison Sterling's logistics company just signed an exclusive ocean freight partnership with last month? Thorne finally asked, his voice hollow. Jenkins was confused. No. Who? Imperial UK Lines, Thorne said. Our biggest competitor on the transatlantic route. This isn't just about the corporate travel account anymore, Arthur. This is about the whole damn cargo and supply business. Sterling could use this as a breach of conduct clause to pull everything. We're not talking about 50 million. We're talking about a potential $500 million catastrophe. The full weight of the situation finally crashed down on Arthur Jenkins. This wasn't just about a disgruntled passenger anymore. It wasn't even just about a billionaire's son. This was an existential threat to the cruise line triggered by a single inexplicable act of violence. In the luxury lounge, the slap had landed on Marcus Sterling, but the shockwave was about to shatter Celestial Horizon Cruises for Brenda Miller. The 24 hours after the incident were a dizzying, brutal descent into a new reality. She was placed on immediate, unpaid suspension pending the outcome of the investigation of formality. She knew in her heart that her career was over. The cruise line she had dedicated her life to, the uniform she wore with such pride, was now a shield that had been stripped away, leaving her exposed. She was interviewed by the port police, but Marcus Sterling, in a move that surprised everyone, declined to press criminal charges. A message was relayed through his father's legal team. Mr. Sterling is not interested in personal retribution. He is interested in corporate accountability. This wasn't about sending one woman to jail. It was about holding the entire cruise line responsible for its employees' actions, and the culture that allowed them. But the lack of criminal charges was no reprieve. It was in many ways worse. It meant the battle would be fought not in a criminal court, but in the court of public opinion and corporate law, where the Sterling family wielded godlike power. The first blow landed the next morning. A formal letter of termination from Celestial Horizons' HR department arrived by courier. The cause was listed as gross misconduct, including physical assault of a passenger and violation of the company's code of conduct. Her union representative called her, his voice grim. Brenda, there's nothing we can do. They have video. They have witness statements from passengers and your own crewmate. If we fight this, we'll lose and it'll drain our legal fund for nothing. I'm sorry, the second blow came from the media. The actress in Cabana 3, deeply disturbed by the incident, had given her video to a major news outlet. By noon, the story was everywhere. Celestial Horizon steward fired after shocking onboard assault. The footage was grainy, shot from an angle, but it was undeniable. It showed Brenda leaning over, her voice sharp and angry, and then the sharp, clear motion of her hand striking Marcus's face. The internet did the rest. Her name, which had been withheld by the mainstream media, was leaked on social media. Her Facebook profile was discovered, her photo shared thousands of times. She became a meme, a symbol of entitled service workers, a Karen of the high seas. Strangers dissected her life, mocked her pictures, and left venomous comments. Her digital world was set ablaze. Her phone began to ring with calls from unknown numbers. Some were reporters, others were simply people calling to scream at her. She had to shut it off. Then her address was posted online. A newsvan parked across the street from her small house in Queens. She became a prisoner in her own home, peeking through the blinds at a world that now hated her. Friends and colleagues who had initially sent messages of concern went silent. They couldn't afford to be associated with her. In the tightly knit world of cruise, she was now radioactive. The career she had built, the community that came with it, had vanished overnight. The financial pressure, already a crushing weight, became a full-blown crisis. With no income, the mortgage payment loomed. Her mother's nursing home called about an overdue bill. The life she had struggled to keep afloat was now sinking fast. And she had been the one to punch a hole in the bottom of the boat, desperate. She scraped together what little savings she had and hired a lawyer to sue Celestial Horizon for wrongful termination. It was a Hail Mary pass. Her lawyer, a cut-rate specialist in employment disputes, listened to her story, his expression growing more and more weary. "Let me get this straight," he said, rubbing his temples. "You're claiming self-defense, but the passenger never touched you, never raised his voice, and never threatened you. You were the one who initiated physical contact." He was passively aggressive, she insisted. His tone, his demeanor. It was threatening, Ms. Miller, the lawyer said, his voice flat. There is no legal definition of passively aggressive that justifies physical assault. And even if there were, it's your word against half a dozen witnesses and a video recording. The cruise line's lawyers will countersue you for defamation and the costs of grounding that ship, which I assure you runs into the hundreds of thousands of dollars. They will bury you. He laid out the brutal truth. Her case was unwinnable. Her lawsuit was dismissed before it even began. And she was left with nothing but another legal bill she couldn't pay. The karma was swift and merciless. Every door she had, every path she could walk was now closed. She was not just unemployed. She was unemployable. No other cruise line would touch her. The service industry, the only one she knew, was now off limits. Who would hire a waitress, a hotel clerk, or a customer service agent who had become infamous for physically assaulting a customer? Her fall was complete. In a single rage-fueled moment, she hadn't just lost her job. She had lost her reputation, her community, her financial stability, and her future. She was a pariah, haunted by the memory of a sharp cracking sound in the face of a calm young man, who had refused to be broken and had, in his stillness, broken her entire world. While Brenda Miller's life was imploding, a much larger, more strategic battle was being waged in the sterile environment of corporate boardrooms. The Sterling family was not finished for Harrison Sterling. The firing of a single steward was like treating a symptom while ignoring the disease. He saw the incident not as the fault of one stressed-out woman, but as a failure of the entire corporate culture at Celestial Horizon Cruises. Celestial Horizon issued a public statement. It was a masterpiece of corporate non-apology drafted by a team of lawyers. It spoke of an unfortunate incident, mentioned that the employee no longer works for the company, and promised a full review of our policies. It never mentioned Marcus by name, and certainly didn't admit to any systemic failure. To the public, it seemed like the matter was closed. To Harrison Sterling, it was an insult. He waited a week, letting the news cycle move on. Then he made his move. He didn't call the press. He didn't tweet. He sent a single formal letter to the board of directors at Celestial Horizon, and simultaneously to their chief rival, Imperial UK Lines. The letter to Celestial Horizon announced the immediate termination of all contracts between Sterling Global Logistics and the cruise line, citing the incident as a fundamental breach of their partnership agreement, which included clauses on passenger safety and corporate responsibility. The letter detailed the assault on his son and framed the airline's tepid public response as evidence of a culture that did not take such matters seriously. The estimated financial impact for Celestial Horizon was not $50 million. It was closer to $400 million when ship supply, executive travel, and logistics partnerships were all factored in. The stock market reacted instantly. When news of the contract termination leaked, as Harrison knew it would, Celestial Horizon stock price plummeted by 12% in a single day, wiping out over $1 billion in shareholder value. The board was in panic. The CEO, Richard Thorne, was suddenly facing a fight for his job. The company wasn't just losing a client, it was hemorrhaging money and credibility. This was the first twist. The karma wasn't just for Brenda, it was for the corporation that had for years ignored rising complaints about staff, burnout, and declining customer service standards in its pursuit of higher profit margins. The second twist came from the letter sent to Imperial UK Lines. It was not a complaint, it was a proposal. It was at this point that the world learned why Marcus had said it happened again. For years, as he traveled for his academic work, he had quietly endured a litany of microaggressions and outright profiling. He'd been randomly selected for security checks far more often than his peers. He'd had his presence in VIP lounges questioned. He'd been treated with suspicion and condescension. The slap was simply the most violent and public manifestation of a prejudice he faced constantly. But Marcus was not a passive victim. 2 years prior, he had used his own trust fund to establish the Sterling Justice Foundation, a non-profit foundation dedicated to developing and implementing advanced de-escalation and implicit bias training programs. It was a passion project born from his own experiences. Harrison Sterling's letter to Imperial UK proposed a partnership. Sterling Global Logistics would move its entire global travel and cargo portfolio to them, an exclusive 10-year contract worth billions. In return, Imperial UK would agree to become the first cruise line to fully implement the Sterling Justice Foundation's training program across its entire global staff, from dock agents to captains to cabin stewards. They would become a case study for a new standard in customer service, one rooted in empathy, respect, and cultural awareness. It was a brilliant move. It wasn't just punitive, it was constructive. He wasn't just punishing one company, he was rewarding another for doing the right thing. He was using his immense financial leverage to force positive industry-wide change. Imperial UK, seeing a chance to snatch a massive contract and score an incredible PR victory, agreed almost immediately. The announcement sent a second shockwave through the industry. The hard karma for Brenda Miller now took on a new, more profound dimension. Her story was no longer just about a steward who got fired. She had become an unwilling catalyst. Her act of personal prejudice was now the public justification for a massive corporate shift towards progressive training and accountability. The very bias she had acted upon was now the subject of a multi-million-dollar initiative designed to eradicate it. Months later, Brenda, now working a grueling job as a cashier at a discount superstore to make ends meet, saw a new segment on the breakroom TV. It was a feature on the new Sterling Initiative and its successful partnership with Imperial UK. The reporter was praising the program for revolutionizing maritime service. Then the camera focused on a young man receiving a Corporate Integrity Award at a lavish ceremony. It was Kevin Park. He was being honored and promoted for his courage in telling the truth during the investigation. He spoke briefly, thanking the Sterling Initiative for fostering a culture where doing the right thing is rewarded. Brenda stared at the screen, her hands smelling of disinfectant and cheap plastic. The irony was a physical blow. Her rage had destroyed her, but it had inadvertently created an opportunity for the honest junior colleague she had scorned. It had funded a program that stood for everything she had rejected. She wasn't just punished, she had been rendered a footnote in a story of positive change that she had, through her own ugliness, set in motion. That was the deepest karma of all. Not just to fail, but for your failure to become the foundation of another's success. The fallout for Celestial Horizon Cruises was not merely a crisis, it was a corporate extinction event. The loss of the Sterling Logistics contract was the first tremor of an earthquake that buckled the very foundations of the company. In an emergency board meeting held in a room thick with panic and the smell of stale coffee, the numbers on the projector screen told a story of pure carnage. The stock price was in freefall, shareholder value was evaporating, and the brand, once a symbol of prestige, was now synonymous with prejudice and violence. The bloodletting was swift and brutal. Richard Thorne, the CEO, who had tried to manage the situation with legalistic non-apologies, was unceremoniously fired. His golden parachute was deployed, but his reputation was in tatters. His replacement was Victoria Graves, a woman legendary in the corporate world as a fixer. She was a turnaround specialist known for her unsentimental, decisive leadership. Her first public act was not a carefully worded press release, but a stark live press conference, standing alone at a podium against a simple blue backdrop bearing the Celestial Horizon logo. She looked directly into the cameras, her expression devoid of excuses. "Good morning," she began, her voice clear and steady. "I'm the new CEO of Celestial Horizon Cruises. I won't waste your time with platitudes. What happened on the Azure Titan was not an unfortunate incident. It was a failure. We failed Marcus Sterling. We failed our customers, and we failed our own standards of basic human decency. There was no excuse for the assault he endured, and there was no excuse for the weak and inadequate response that followed. On behalf of this entire company, I offer a profound, unequivocal, and personal apology to Mr. Sterling and his family. We were wrong, and we will do whatever it takes to make it right. Her second act was even more significant. She announced that Celestial Horizon was not only humbly requesting to license the Sterling Justice Foundation's training program, but was also making a $10 million donation to the foundation to help expand its work. It was a public act of contrition and a strategic masterstroke, signaling a complete break from the past. The company would not just adopt the new standard, it would help fund it. The rollout was mandatory and intensive. Veteran employees who grumbled about woke nonsense were told in no uncertain terms that this was the new Celestial Horizon and they could either embrace it or find employment elsewhere. Marcus Sterling, who had meticulously avoided the media circus, finally agreed to a single extended interview. He chose to do it not in a sterile television studio, but in the quiet, wood-paneled reading room of a library at Oxford. He appeared just as he had on the ship, composed, intelligent, and without a trace of vengefulness. The veteran journalist interviewing him leaned forward, her question pointed. You were assaulted, publicly humiliated. Your family has immense power. Many people in your position would have sought revenge to ruin Ms. Miller personally. Marcus offered a small, thoughtful smile. Anger is an easy, almost seductive emotion, he said, but it's rarely the most productive one. What would have been the ultimate goal of revenge? To see one woman's life destroyed? That felt insufficient. My father and I saw a deep systemic issue. Ms. Miller was clearly a woman under a great deal of personal stress. I don't doubt that. But stress doesn't create prejudice. It acts as a pressure valve, revealing the biases that are already present. The real failure was a corporate system that hadn't equipped her to manage that bias, and a culture that in subtle ways may have even encouraged it, he continued, his words captivating the interviewer and the audience at home. We didn't see an opportunity for retribution. We saw an opportunity for reform, to use a moment of unacceptable behavior to build a better, more empathetic system. Punishing one person is an act of ego. Changing an entire system, that is an act of progress. His grace and foresight were undeniable, cementing his public image as a thoughtful leader, not a privileged victim. Nearly a year passed. The world, as it always does, moved on. The Miami incident faded from the headlines, becoming just another case study in business schools. For Brenda Miller, however, the incident was not a memory. It was the four walls of her new life. She worked as a cashier at a sprawling, chaotic superstore. Her days were a monotonous blur of beeping scanners, irritable customers, and the constant dull ache in her feet. Her tailored Celestial Horizon uniform had been replaced by a cheap, ill-fitting polyester polo shirt that perpetually smelled of the store's cleaning chemicals. She was on her lunch break, sitting in the soulless, windowless break room. The flickering fluorescent light above cast a sickly pallor on her face. She was eating a cold, dry turkey sandwich from a crumpled plastic bag, scrolling idly on her cracked phone. A new segment playing on the small wall-mounted television caught her attention. It was a slickly produced feature on the cruise industry's great reset in customer service. The story hailed the Sterling Justice Foundation as a revolutionary force. Then the camera focused on a man, receiving a Vision and Leadership Award at a polished corporate ceremony. It was Kevin Park. He looked sharp and confident in a tailored suit. The chyron beneath his smiling face read, Kevin Park, Director of In-Flight Experience, Imperial UK Lines. He had been promoted far beyond a simple supervisor. He stepped to the podium, the picture of modern corporate success. The Sterling Initiative taught us that empathy isn't a soft skill, Kevin said, his voice resonating with a confidence Brenda had never heard from him. It is a core competency as critical as safety or logistics. It's about seeing the person, not the passenger. Brenda stared at the screen, the sandwich forgotten in her hand. A wave of something cold and heavy washed over her. It wasn't the sharp sting of anger anymore that had burned out months ago, leaving behind only ash. This was the hollow, profound ache of utter irrelevance. The reporter's voiceover continued, mentioning how the industry had been transformed, thanks in large part to the changes sparked by the now infamous Miami incident. Her life's greatest moment of shame, the single act that had annihilated her identity, her finances and her future, had been sanitized and repurposed. It was a watershed moment, a catalyst. Her personal catastrophe had become a footnote in someone else's success story. The world had not just punished her, it had absorbed her failure, broken it down and used it as compost to grow something better, leaving her to rot. She was a discarded husk. She saw her own reflection in the dark screen of her phone. A tired, anonymous woman with haunted eyes. She had lost everything, but the world had gained a new standard of service. The karmic balance was both perfect and exquisitely cruel. Her name would be forgotten, buried in old news articles. But the consequences of her actions had, with a bitter and profound irony, made the world of travel a demonstrably better, more humane place. The ship had been grounded, but an entire industry had been forced to aim for a higher horizon, leaving her forever stranded on the ground. The break room buzzer sounded, harsh and insistent. Her lunch break was over. She carefully wrapped her uneaten sandwich, dropped it in the trash, and walked back out to her register to scan the next item. This story serves as a powerful reminder that our actions, especially those born from anger and prejudice, can have consequences that ripple out far beyond our control. For Brenda Miller, a moment of fury cost her everything. For Marcus Sterling, a lifetime of quiet dignity gave him the strength to turn an ugly assault into a force for positive change. It shows that true power isn't about shouting the loudest, but about knowing exactly who to call and what to build from the wreckage. The karma here wasn't just punitive, it was constructive, forcing an entire industry to confront its flaws.